Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you all are at, and welcome to another fine edition of the Caps Locks and Chair Shots podcast. With me is the muscle of the podcast, future voice of the Philippines, and hopeful MMA fighter, the one, the only, the Jaime. Say hi to the people, Jaime.
What's up, wrestling fans? I'm back.
And the third member of our trio today, you know him, I hate him. He's here via court order because he is the voice of the voiceless, and those are the indie fans. He is the real Danny D. Say hi to the people, Danny.
What's up, everyone? It's good to be back. It's terrible to be with Ed, but let's get this show rolling.
Now, you will have to excuse Dan if his connection seems a little weak. It is because it is an independent connection, and they are too busy diving off data cliffs to keep it stable. But I digress. First things first, Jaime, 3 shows in wrestling. Well, 4 if you include 205 Live. What was your big takeaway? What's the one thing that kept you being a wrestling fan this week?
Well, the nostalgia of the return of the Ultimate X, definitely, in Impact.
Very, very good on that. Ultimate X, love it. Danny, tell me something that kept you a wrestling fan. And it better not be somebody doing dives somewhere in a gym.
Well, I mean, do you consider the UK special diving? Because that was kind of something that had me really pumped up.
Is it produced by the WWE?
Sure, it's produced by your company.
Then no, it is totally mainstream. And hey, great. You know, they want to do a UK championship. Hey, good on them. You know, give them British people something to cheer for, because they haven't had a lot to cheer for since, you know, Davey Boy Smith, I guess. Because does Wade Barrett even count? But anyway, Dan, what's the one thing you hated this week about wrestling?
The go-home show for SmackDown.
Yes, it sucked, and it was the 4th best show of 4 shows this week, in my opinion. Jaime, do you agree with that? Was SmackDown that terrible?
SmackDown was fine, but I didn't like the women's division match.
What was it? Oh, yeah, Carmella and Naomi. I didn't see the point in it, to be honest, because they already did the contract signing, and really, what's a contract signing if there's no title for it to be signed about? I completely agree with you on that. So that brings us now, since we talked about the good and bad of the week, and we're kind of shying away from breakdowns of what's already happened. Jaime, let's go to you. Backlash is going to be in less than 24 hours. What is the one thing you're going to go through before I bring up the card and we go through the entire card match by match? What's the one match you're looking forward to?
Definitely Kevin Owens versus AJ Styles.
Yeah, that definitely seems to be something big. Now, what's got you excited about Mr. Owens and Mr. Styles?
Well, definitely the two can perform. The two can put up good matches. Like, they have the ability to fight forever. So, I'm looking forward to see how it goes from there. You see?
Right, totally. Now, let's look at the card top to bottom. Is there a match that you just don't want to talk about? Something that doesn't pique your interest at all, besides the obvious women's division, that I don't think anybody could give a damn about at this point?
I think Harper and Rowan pretty much interests me. You know, the last time the two wrestlers feuded, it was Harper that got over. But what makes it interesting this time is the new persona that Eric Rowan is trying to apply.
Right, and it's hard to tell what exactly he is.
Yeah.
Okay. Dan, let's go over to you. What's the one match that you are really excited to see, and the one that you just can't stand, that your pee break match?
So I am going to give, of course, my lovely opinion on this. I am not excited for this card at all. I'm considering watching Evolve 85 and watching Backlash back later. It's just a terrible card in my mind. The only match I'm actually interested in is the Nakamura-Dolph match, and that's because Dolph can work and Nakamura can work.
That's because you are
later in the show.
You are such a mark that I feel I have to do this with you right now. Ladies and gentlemen, for those of you listening, I'm going to please ask you all, wherever you're at, if you're driving, pull over to the side of the road. If you're walking, please stop. If you're anywhere, just sit down and bow your heads while we pray. In the name of Cena and Taker and Triple H and Shawn Michaels, wrestling boss, who art in Stamford, Vincent be thy name. Thy WrestleMania come, and SummerSlam will be done in MSG as it is in LA. Forgive us not the gobbledygooker, as we have forgiven Hulk Hogan. And lead us not into TNA, and forgive us for watching WCW. Yes. In the name of Cena, Taker, Triple H, and Shawn Michaels, I hope, in some small way, Dan, that brings you back to the WWE just maybe a little bit. But on with the card. Now, the kickoff show is going to feature Ty Dillinger and Aiden English. Has there ever been a more one-sided, decisive, already picked match than this one? Is there any way that the Crybaby is going to beat the Perfect 10? Dan, let's start with you. Yay, nay?
No chance in hell.
Jaime?
No.
That's what I like to hear. Agreement. And I'm going to actually agree with both of you at this point. Now, Luke Harper, Eric Rowan. Jaime, pick.
Rowan.
Dan?
Harper.
I can see where you think that, but you're both wrong, and let me tell you why. The loser of this match is the fans straight across the board. This has the potential to be booed out of the building on a show that has a Randy Orton match. I'm just saying, it's going to be terrible. Speaking of terrible, the terrible push, or lack thereof, of Sami Zayn continues. He's facing the Lone Wolf, Baron Corbin. Dan, Lone Wolf or Sami?
If you guys remember back WrestleMania season, I thought Corbin should have got the IC title. So obviously I'm thinking Corbin is going to win this match. And it's going to be somewhat of a squash match. Sami's going to get a nice little push there for about a minute or two. But Corbin is just going to dominate the whole match.
Jaime?
Well, Dan said it. I'm going with my man, Baron Corbin.
See, I want to disagree with you. I really want to rip into both of you. And I was hoping, Dan, you were going to give it to me with the whole, Sami Zayn used to share similar traits with the recently deceased El Generico. May he rest in peace. But yeah, Corbin's going to win this one, mainly because we got Money in the Bank right around the corner, and they're building Corbin to something, although it wouldn't shock me to see Zayn win that match as well. But that's a few months down the road. We're getting ahead of ourselves. Now, let's spend a little bit of time on this one, gentlemen. Naomi, Becky Lynch, Charlotte Flair versus Natalya, Carmella, Tamina, James Ellsworth. Who cares? Either one. Yay, nay? Dan, you care?
No, this is a pointless match.
Jaime?
Yeah. Well, just a bold prediction, just a premature prediction. I think this is the time that Charlotte's going to turn heel on everyone. Like, the storyline's going to shift into, instead of Charlotte and Friends versus the Welcoming Committee, it's gonna be Charlotte versus the world now, trying to chop down the competition until she gets to that title match. So maybe starting out with Carmella, then Natalya, then Becky Lynch, then the biggest Tamina, then eventually Naomi. That's what I think is going to happen.
Alright, well, I'm going to give you a bold prediction. This will be the debut of that Asian chick in NXT. Osaka, right? That's her name, right? I don't watch NXT. It's a little too close to the independent line I have drawn in the sand. But
Asuka.
whatever. She's gonna debut. She's gonna debut tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
She's gonna break Goldberg's streak tonight. She debuts tomorrow. That's all. That you wanted a bold prediction. This is a bold prediction. Dan, we already know how you feel about this one. We have the man that's never wrestled a match in the WWE, an independent wrestling mark who speaks terrible broken English, an Oriental man who I could care for a little bit more than maybe I care for the legacy of my great-grandfather who may or may not have been on the losing side of 2 world wars, against Dolph Ziggler. I love Dolph. I had an email address that, the show stealer for a little while back in my uber nerdy days. Dan, convince me that Nakamura wins this match, or that he deserves to win this match.
Watch his NXT matches. That's all you need to do for convincing. And just so you know, I am a huge Dolph Ziggler mark. Huge. He is absolutely one of my favorite guys in the company. But he is going to get demolished by Nakamura.
Dan,
Dan, he's going to be next in line for Orton. He will be fighting Orton for the title at SummerSlam.
That hurt my head a little. That you can go from not having a match ever on a big show to the main event of SummerSlam. Jaime, tell Dan he's insane.
You're insane, Dan.
Thank you. Now, for one...
You don't disagree with me, though.
Does Nakamura beat Ziggler? Do we see another burial on Dolph?
Well, I think Dolph... Well, as much as this match, the result of this match is already something made. It's kind of a predictable one, despite how long it's going to be. I think Dolph should win this match via a dirty tactic, trick he hasn't used under his sleeve. Because lately Nakamura has gotten the best of him, so maybe this is the time Dolph gets the best of Nakamura in one way or another.
Well, we'll see. I personally am going to hate my life if Nakamura wins because I have talked just about as much crap on Nakamura as Ziggler has, so here's the hoping that the WWE continues to do the wrong thing with a debuting superstar. Now, we have 3 title matches on this card. The first one, the face of America, Kevin Owens, in all of his Canadian glory, takes on a man from southern Georgia, AJ Styles. Geographically, they're 3,000 miles apart. Looks, AJ blows him away. Ring, it's a push. Experience, it's kind of a push. Jaime, you're not a U.S. citizen. Does this matter to you?
Yeah.
Or is the U.S. title still something you care about?
Well, because the US title has always been there regardless of, who holds it. You see, Rusev has held it. A lot of international stars have held it in the past. So, I'm more after the match, actually, regardless of who wins or loses.
Okay, so, who wins or loses?
I'll go with Kevin Owens.
Fair enough. Dan, AJ or Owens? NXT or the Indies? Or not, I'm sorry, not NXT, Impact or the Indies?
This is my favorite match on the card, next to Nakamura and Dolph. I love seeing 2 indie stars getting in there. They're going to work the hell out of the crowd. They're going to work the hell out of the ring. They're going to tear the roof, blow the roof off the place. And you are going to see Kevin Steen walk out of there still the United States champion.
No, he is Kevin Owens, and AJ is not an indie star. AJ was an TNA star. Whether you want to believe it or not, TNA, not an indie. AJ was made in Impact, in the Impact Zone, in Orlando, Florida. AJ was made.
AJ was made in Ring of Honor and on the Indies.
You're high. You're high. There's no other way around it. You must be sniffing too many of the chemicals you're using where you work. Dan's at work, by the way, for those of you that cannot see the hilarious face screens that I'm getting from both of these guys because my connection is crappy. Dan's at work and Jaime it's early in the morning on Sunday in the Philippines, so that's why if we're a little bit goofy today, this is the product of it. Speaking of a little bit of goofy, Breezango doing the most entertaining promos I have seen since The Miz and Damien Sandow were together, and Sandow was his stuntman. They're going up against the Usos, who cut a promo which was phenomenal for a lot of reasons, but I couldn't get past the fact that they kept referring to themselves as the same name as each other was talking. That being said, Dan, you look like you got something to say.
That promo was straight fire. That was an amazing promo that the Usos cut. They should have been heels long before they were turned. Then, oh my God, that was just one of the best promos I've heard on SmackDown in a while.
Oh, I completely agree with you. But it came in the wrong week. That promo should have come 2 weeks ago. They completely buried their opponents for a major pay-per-view match. And now that the whole match is no longer in doubt. You know, Breezango is entertaining as hell, and the Fashion Police skits where they're ripping off Law and Order are fantastic. But when the Usos cut such an amazing promo the week before the pay-per-view, it just buried everything. It's like, for those of you uber wrestling nerds like I was 10 years ago, when you were used to do e-fetting and you used to write promos for your own superstar, and some arbitrary other nerd living in his parents' basement would write a match and pick a winner. It's the same thing. I can write 10 really great segments, but somebody can blow me away with one the day before the deadline, and I'll be cooked in the water. It's the same thing. The Usos haven't done anything entertaining for the last month. Fandango's been there doing B-plus stuff. The Usos turn in A-plus stuff, and now the Usos are going to win. Jaime, am I wrong here? Do you see the Usos winning this match?
Yeah, I see them winning this match, but expect Breezango to be in the picture or maybe on the upper card of the tag team division for weeks to come. But this match, Backlash, Usos.
Okay. Now we're gonna put a pause on the Backlash preview before we get to the main event. Dan, what do you got to say?
I actually, so before Ciampa's injury, I saw DIY coming up after TakeOver tonight, and I thought Breezango was going to win, and then DIY was going to take the titles off of them. But now with the injury, I'm not sure how that's going to play out, but I would not be surprised to see Breezango still win this title, or if the Usos win, it's not clean.
Well, two things I wanted to get to here. If Breezango does win this championship, okay, they're good guys. New Day set to debut here real soon as Kofi can go. They're obviously going to want their belts back. New guys versus new guys never happens anymore. Vince is firmly into black and white, good and bad, blah versus blah. So, this is why I'm saying the Usos are going to win tonight. Breezango, when New Day comes back and fills that entertaining 15-minute void somewhere around 9:15 that they've been getting, you're going to see Breezango go the way of Goldust and R-Truth. Now, Dustin Runnels has been Goldust, Goldust for 20 years. He just turned on R-Truth. We got the next Raw pay-per-view coming up. It looks like they're going to be building for a match in 2 weeks and a couple of days for them too. What do you guys want to get out of that? Do you want to see Goldust maybe go off into the sunset with a victory here, or is it more his character to lose some hilarious way? Jaime, let's go with you. Should Goldust lose against R-Truth?
Well, no, he has to get over because more of Goldust than R-Truth. It's a way of putting him on TV more often. So that's why maybe they turned against each other, even if the Golden Truth was working.
Well, they have turned against each other, and it honestly, I don't know how I feel about this. Dan, tell me, what do we get out of this? What do we get out of a Goldust R-Truth match?
don't think that's what we're getting. I don't know what we're getting. I don't know the point in that. It was made no sense to me. It was kind of pointless. I mean, maybe we'll get a blow-off match on Raw, but I don't think we're going to get that at a pay-per-view. I think Goldust is going to go out the same way Taker did on his back.
Well,
to somebody young.
The thing about it is, you say you don't get it, and here's why it makes perfect sense. They did this in, I can't remember the year, I want to say 96, 97, when Goldust was the S&M version of Goldust, the very un-PG version, with Marlena, or Terry as she later became called, smoking her cigars, and they were doing the 24-karat productions, and he was having street fights with Roddy Piper, and he was the obscene Goldust. And they did this then where he kind of split from her, and we saw something that came off as very real, very entertaining, and very rough, very hardcore. Something that it seemed like Dustin Rhodes had pent up inside of him since he was the son of the plumber, and watching his dad prance around in polka dot tights and everything else, and he was never taken seriously, and that was his chance to be taken seriously. What I think we're going to see is his systematic destruction of R-Truth, his systematic destruction of him just blowing R-Truth away, and we get a mean and nasty Goldust, maybe even an Intercontinental Championship Goldust for a few months before, I think maybe around SummerSlam, perhaps even he goes all the way to WrestleMania before he retires. Jaime, what do you think? Am I off base here?
Oh, yeah. Like I said, that's a way of putting Goldust on TV more. Put him on the storylines more, to give him significance more. So, I definitely agree with your point.
Okay. That brings us to the last match on the card. WWE Champion Randy Orton versus Jinder Mahal. Now, with Jinder, we're probably going to see him coming out with the Singh brothers. With Orton, he's very much the Viper, the never with anybody outside of Evolution and Legacy. Are we going to see Orton hinder the Jinder? That's a hashtag. If y'all listen out there, be sure to use it before Sunday. Don't hinder the Jinder. Are we going to see Orton stop Jinder in his tracks, or will we see, as the WWE expands into India, go on and put the title on Jinder Mahal? Jaime, what do you think?
I think Orton's going to win this thing. Like, he's going to find a way. You know how Orton's cerebral in-ring psychology is. So, it might play a factor in this match. Like, how is he going to neutralize the Singh brothers? And, it's just one RKO out of nowhere. We've seen that on last Tuesday, on SmackDown, when he pulled out that RKO on Baron Corbin.
That's alright. It's still a Friday for me, too, because I still think of it as a Friday night SmackDown. Dan, Jinder, Orton, you're yawning, and it's starting to tick me off. What do you think? Who wins? Go.
Okay, first off, who cares?
Oh
this
my
is
God.
the least relevant match on this card.
If I could
mute
you, I would.
If you want a prediction, Orton's going to win. Can we move on?
No, we're not going to move on. In fact, we're going to spend an inordinate amount of time because it's the WWE Championship. A WWE Championship, we can trace the lineage all the way back to 1959 and Buddy Rogers beating Eduardo Carpentier in MSG when Carpentier was the disputed NWA champion, giving credit to the WWF's world champion, Buddy Rogers. We can trace it all the way back over 60 years. We're going to spend time on this because it is important. You don't care because you think Jinder's on steroids and you think Orton is an indie-hating fascist. And he is. And he's my hero.
Jinder has done steroids. He has gyno. Look at his nipples tomorrow night. That dude has gyno to no extreme, and he can afford to get that taken care of now.
I am not in the business of looking at another man's nipples. I'm sorry. I've been accused of a lot of things, but being a nipple gazer is not one of them. Okay? And I don't care what you say or what Orton has said. We got into this fight earlier in the week. I want a straight answer from you in front of the 7 people that subscribe to our podcast. Do you or do you not hate Randy Orton?
I do not.
And you're lying. I'm looking you straight in the computer screen and saying you're lying. Jaime, do you hate Randy Orton?
No. Why would I?
Do you think this match is going to be boring?
Yes.
I'm not talking to you, Dan. Jaime, me and you are... Go on. I'm sorry. I'm so frazzled. Please continue.
Oh, well, in-ring storytelling wise, no, it's not going to be boring, but I'm just not sure how Jinder can work the long matches because we haven't seen him in a long match ever.
Because he was being held down. And I almost said something bad about our Lord and wrestling savior, Vincent Kennedy McMahon, but I didn't. I refrained. However, Jaime, me and you, we've been doing this since day one. You have been on every podcast, every episode we have. Should we, right now, take a vote to silence Dan and his indie-loving ways? To silence Dan and his WWE-hating ways? Should we vote? I'm calling for a vote right now. A vote of no confidence in the wrestling opinion of Dan.
Same.
Oh, is that an agreement?
Yeah, definitely.
Dan, next week, or the next time you appear on this podcast, you are going to have to defend yourself in a trial of your peers. Ladies and gentlemen, the next time Dan appears on this podcast, it will be the trial of the real Danny D, so he can try to convince us, as he failed to convince me, that he belongs on this podcast. Dan, do you accept these charges?
Guys.
That is an acceptance. You heard it right here, ladies and gentlemen. It'll be the showdown of the century, the match to end all matches on a podcast that you cannot watch. It'll be me versus the real Danny D for him to prove that he can still exist on this podcast. Alright. Switching gears. Let's look forward now. We got a pay-per-view in 2 weeks. We got another pay-per-view in 2 weeks. We got a pay-per-view 3 weeks after that. We got a pay-per-view 2 weeks after that. And then it's 6 weeks to SummerSlam. Jaime, you first. Are we getting oversaturated?
Yes, because back then when there wasn't a brand split, we had it once a month. But remember back in the day when they would have it one every 2 months? I think Jim Ross brought it up on one of his podcasts about, the oversaturation of pay-per-views. Because you see, they used to have it one in every 2 months, so the build-up is really, something to look forward to. Unlike now that it's just like a normal wrestling week.
That's true. Dan, is it too much?
I personally, I can't have enough life.
Start over. Stop. Dan, is it too much?
No. There's no such thing as too much content for me personally. I just need it to be better. It's not what it was when the brand split originally happened. I was so in depth in Raw and SmackDown both last year, and now I'm just it's becoming boring. Really boring.
Absolutely. And the three of us, we are the Impact division for Real Sport 101. Dan, you do the power rankings. Jaime, you and I, we are the Impact on a day-to-day basis. We have Slammiversary coming up. Okay? We haven't seen an Impact pay-per-view that hasn't been a one-night-only deal in a long time. Dan, let's go to you first. What are you looking forward to for Slammiversary?
Just the overall card. I'm looking forward to it being live. I want to see everything run smoothly. I want to see Impact get back on its feet, and I want to see them get this done and show to me that they are back for real.
Okay. Jaime, for the, it seems like 5th week out of the last 2 months, we're going to have a number 1 contender spot for one of the World Championships, whether it be the GFW or for the Impact title, for one. While we were on the subject of watering it down, is this kind of a way of diluting the importance of being a number 1 contender for one of those World Championships?
Well, eventually, those GFW titles are going to be unified. They're gonna fold eventually. They're just trying to see how they could write it off, which they couldn't do right now because the merge is still fresh.
Now, my next question: why are they being featured so prominently? Why are we getting the GF? Why are we seeing more of the GFW Championship? We've seen 3 GFW World Title matches since the merger. We have seen the women's title change hands twice. We got a tournament for the GFW Tag Team titles. Why are we seeing them so much when we haven't seen... When was the last time we saw the Impact Tag Team Championships other than being around the waist or shoulder of LAX? You know, we've seen Bobby Lashley once in the last 3 episodes. We haven't seen Alberto Del Rio in the last 2 episodes, other than a promo package highlighting his match next week. Why are we seeing so much GFW, Dan?
Double J, Jeff Jarrett, making it about himself and the company that he ran for so long again.
Is it really that simple? Is it really that simple that instead of us watching him call guys slap nuts and smashing people with guitars, he's jamming his belts down our throat, Jaime? Is it really that simple?
Well, yeah, definitely. I agree with Dan there because you see, he's creating traffic for another brand he created. So since he has influence on Impact once again, that's what he's trying to do. Create traffic for the brand he created.
Very well. Do either of you guys care about the GFW titles at all? Are they anything more than just a shiny piece of metal around somebody's shoulder? Did anybody really mark out when Alberto Del Rio or Sienna won their titles? Jaime, did you?
No, it's just a prop.
Dan?
Not at all.
Do you guys see it as a build-up to be #1 contenders for the Impact stuff? Should it be Alberto Del Rio and Bobby Lashley? Should it be Sienna and Rosemary? And is that something you guys want to see? Dan, do you want to see Sienna and Rosemary?
Yes, and yes. And you might have just brought up a really good point. Maybe we're going to see title unifications.
Well, I think that's obviously... You know, me and Jaime have been talking about this since it happened. This is the path they have to head down, much the same way when WWE and WCW did that, you know, the invasion and the merger. We have to see that. Jaime, is Alberto Del Rio the right person to face Bobby Lashley, or should it be the Cowboy? Should it be Ethan Carter? Should it be Adonis? Should it be Moose or anybody else? Davey Richards or Eddie Edwards? Should it be anybody else?
Because Del Rio, El Patron, Alberto El Patron is just going to break Lashley down in the ring because you see, Lashley is sort of limited despite the improvements he's shown over the years. So it should be someone just as limited, if not a little more, but definitely not El Patron.
Okay, so who would you rather put in there? Cody Rhodes?
Ethan Carter, for me, is a good match.
Hey, you know, Ethan Carter's my boy. I've loved EC3 since he was Dixie's nephew and going on that unprecedented, undefeated streak. Dan, is there anybody in Impact, or, hell, let's open it up wrestling-wide, and I said wrestling-wide to include those spot monkey divers that you like to watch. Is there anybody wrestling-wide that you would like to see face Bobby Lashley?
You kept bringing up the word limit. It must be like you read my mind. Not that there's a very small chance it might happen, but I'd love to see the limitless Keith Lee go there and fight and take on Bobby Lashley and win that title, so all of you can bask in his glory. But if we're being a little bit more realistic, I'd love to see EC3 in there. I have really no real interest in James Storm being in there at all.
Well, you know, James Storm, he would be the way I would equate him to like he's the JBL of Impact back when JBL was leaving the APA. He's the guy that's been around forever, mostly a tag team guy, there for a little bit early in his career, as JBL was when he was the Hawk, was kind of mentioned in that world title picture, but never really got to run with the ball. He is JBL for Impact. Now, let's talk about a few things that happened this week. And I just forgot that. Or in the recent history, I guess it would be called the leaks of female wrestlers' private photographs. Okay, we've seen pretty much anybody that's been a female wrestler has had her nudes leaked over the last year and a half. Probably the most famous being Paige, who pretty much lost her job. Charlotte has been the most recent. I brought this question up in our little wrestling group we have on Facebook. Is this a way for the WWE to kind of not so subtly get the images of their women into the 18 to 34 male demographic's mind now that Playboy and the WWE have parted ways? Dan, let's go to you. Am I wrong?
100%.
Jaime?
Well, that's actually a good point, you see. Because in the PG era, they're finding it hard to push the women. Because, some of the fans just grew up to see the women as models rather than wrestlers. So maybe that's their way of pushing this diva. So it's a good point you've made, Ed.
Well, that's because they pretty much were models instead of wrestlers. And the reason I said the WWE is behind this is because who right now is the longest tenured female wrestler in the company? It's Natalya, correct? But Natalya, right?
Yeah.
Natalya is also one of the most well respected. She also is a little freaky. I mean, you can tell. Maybe it's just me. Maybe it's just me having a crush on, somebody with the last name of Hart forever. That being said, she's got to have something out there. Why hasn't that been leaked? Because she didn't want to go with it. Because it didn't fit her character. The rest of them, actually, it can be argued, gained popularity because of it, where Natalya wouldn't have. Everybody, if Carmella is sending pictures to James Ellsworth and his phone gets leaked and it's out on TMZ, Carmella's still going to look good. Naomi's still going to look good out of it. Her husband, whatever Uso she's married to, might not. But Natalya would be the only one that would lose across the board. That's why it never happened with her. That's why I say, and I'll give it to you, it's weak as hell. Probably didn't happen because it is so much of a fragile theory. But that's what makes me believe that the WWE is behind all these leaks. Dan, rebuttal?
Man, I just don't see it. Like, the whole women's revolution. I mean, I get your guys' point with it being the PG era, and that's a way to try to get men more into the women's wrestling side of it. I just don't see it happening with the image that the company tries to uphold. And I do think Paige is done. They're not going to come out and say it. It's going to be a mutual release, or they're just going to wait it out till the end of her contract. We will not see her back in the WWE ring again.
Well, one thing we can be for sure, Brad Maddox is done. Or at least he was done. That's all we're going to say about that. Now, damn. The Randy Orton thing. We have to talk about it. Him and Bubba had a Twitter feud earlier on Sunday. They were going back and forth. Orton, I feel like I need to explain myself. I am a former Marine, as both of you guys know. I spent 6 years in the United States Marine Corps. And I'm from the city of St. Louis. Randy Orton did both of those. Randy Orton was dishonorably discharged from the military, from the United States Marine Corps, for being absent, for basically being UA, which is a huge deal for the Marines. Got court-martialed. Then he became a wrestler. My grandfather used to drive his father and his grandfather around the city of St. Louis when they were wrestling for Sam Muchnick at Wrestling in the Chase. So Orton has kind of been my hero, with the exception of the whole court-martial thing. There was a period of time where I didn't really like Randy Orton. And then he went on Twitter. And him and Bully Ray, or Bubba Ray, or, the fat guy from Dudleyville, whatever you want to call him, got into a Twitter feud that was tried and unsuccessfully mitigated by none other than Cody Rhodes, Batista, and the like. So, Randy Orton, on the off chance you're listening, you're my hero. Dan, you were very vocal against Mr. Orton. Here's 5 minutes. Talk to me about what you think of Randy Orton's Twitter message.
My whole issue with Orton is that he worked for what he has to an extent. I'm not going to take anything away from the guy. But just because other guys are doing it differently than how he did it, you shouldn't talk down on them. Those guys aren't second, third generation superstars that are coming up through the ranks that, yes, you watch the shows, you watch Total Divas, you watch Holy Foley, you watch the shows on the WWE Network, you're going to see that, yeah, the name does help. And the name Orton helped. The name Orton got him in the door. He worked for what he had. You take a name like myself. If I go up to Mark Carrano when they're in Baltimore for Extreme Rules, hey, Mark Carrano, I want to work out at the Performance Center to see if I have what it takes. He's going to tell me, go online, fill it out, we'll see what we got. That's if I somehow talk to Mark Carrano. So, I mean,
well, you being a feature contributor to the Caps Locks and Chair Shots podcast, I am more than certain he is going to give you his ear. I mean, I don't want to brag, but we're pretty huge among these 7 people that listen to us.
This is very true. But I mean, it's you can't bash guys for doing those spots. I can't remember where I read it on Twitter, and I can't remember who said it.
Anonymous source, go on.
Anonymous source made a really good point. About every 5 to 10 years, you have these different generational superstars who stop doing these spots. Well, guess what? The indies are full of guys in their early 20s to late 20s now, possibly early 30s, that are going to do these spots, and they do them well, and they do them great. I watch the WWE because it's my male soap opera. That is how I would describe some. I watch indie wrestling because of the high spots and the dives, because that is it's an art form. Both programmings are 2 different art forms, and you shouldn't bash one art form because you don't like it. You shouldn't bash hip-hop if you don't like hip-hop because you're a rock guy. They're 2 different types of music. I mean, it's just, you have to have respect in this industry, and I hope Orton never has to be put in a situation to where he needs independent booking. Because I don't know if he'll get it.
Well, I can see where you think that. And you're wrong. And let me tell you why. Okay? A lot of what you said, 1,000,000% correct. But I'm telling you, as somebody that's on the other side of that fence, I watch the WWE because it's in my blood. It's right here. It's flowing through my veins. It's in my heart. I'm WWE through and through. And honestly, now that I do the Impact recaps and I care a damn about what happens in a small television studio on Universal Studios in Orlando, Florida, I feel like I'm cheating on my family and the WWE. Beside the point. You see, the thing is, if I want to watch a bunch of small guys pull off a bunch of fast moves and jump off some really high stuff and put their bodies in peril, don't they do that in The Matrix? Doesn't he jump off something really high in The Matrix? Isn't it the same thing? I mean, Neo is so fast, he's dodging bullets by bending backward. Joey Ryan uses his genitalia in a special maneuver. I'm sorry, I don't care. I tend to agree with Orton on this. A lot of these guys are just trained stuntmen who can, oh hey, I just kicked a guy in the face and he staggered back. Now I'm going to go jump off the top rope, flip as many times as I can, and whatever body part I land on, that's what I meant to do. Now I understand in wrestling there's a certain level of a suspension of disbelief that you have to have in any form to enjoy the show. That being said, some of the stuff that these indie guys do are so outlandish, are so just mind-boggling that they can actually get into a ring and expect the 20 to 30 people that are sitting in the folding chairs they probably bought from the trunks of their car to watch these guys for mere peanuts, that they can expect them to believe that this stuff is anything close to real, is disheartening as both a human being and as a wrestling fan. So I get Orton's frustration. And honestly, if Randy Orton is in a position where he needs to be indie booked, there is a fundamental problem in the life of Kenneth Orton, that he is in need of indie wrestling. He's made more than enough money when the WWE says, hey, we're done with you. He doesn't need to wrestle again. What just happened, Dan? What just happened?
Takeover on in the background, and Roddy just beat Sanity. So
I have no idea what you're talking about.
First match on the card. But no, I get exactly what you're saying. But like I said also when we were talking about it earlier in the week, my biggest problem with Orton in this situation is the best spot he ever did, he didn't even come up with. An indie guy came up with it.
Be more specific.
Seth Rollins, the RKO, is the best spot that Orton has ever done, and he did not come up with that.
No, negative. The best spot he ever did was catching Matt Bourne in the middle of a 450 splash and giving him an RKO. Or Shelton Benjamin in the Royal Rumble when he was springing up the top rope and giving him an RKO. Those were the two best spots he did. Seth Rollins comes in a distant third. Now,
no way!
Absolutely he does.
The RKO off of Orton's back coming a distant third.
Oh.
No way. Jaime, come on.
The one he did to Evan Bourne and to Shelton Benjamin were totally better. Jaime, you've been quiet for ever. What are your thoughts? I'm not going to ask you to pick sides because I know if you want to stay on this podcast, you'll choose me. Beside the point, who's right, Dan or myself?
Well, my opinion about Orton is he was born with the silver spoon. He had the WWE handed to him. So about the comment he had with Bully Ray, Bubba Ray, whatever you want to call him, I think it would have made more it would have done more justice for the WWE if, let's say, a homegrown who hasn't really got to where he was supposed to be, someone like Dolph Ziggler made that comment. But since it was Randy Orton who made that comment, that's what made it that's what made, let's say, the issue bigger than what it's supposed to be.
No. You're wrong too, and let me tell you why. Sean Stasiak. That's all you need to say to debunk that he's a third-generation superstar. He had the silver spoon in his mouth. Sean Stasiak, another third-generation superstar. Huge man, had the look. Really underrated because I think he could have wrestled. And I think he did pretty damn well when he was given the gimmick of being meat for PMS. When Jackie and Terry made him his boy toy and talked about how much larger his anatomy was than the likes of Val Venus. By the way, 1998 and 99 Raw, wow, were the sexual suggestivenesses. I digress. Sean Stasiak, the exact same position Orton was just 5 years prior. Where's Stasiak now? Why isn't he a 13-time world champion? Why isn't he headlining a pay-per-view tonight? Why isn't he headlining a WrestleMania? Or the last 6 that Orton has? You know why? Because he didn't have it. You know who has it? Randy Orton. You know why Randy Orton has it? Yeah, it's in his blood, but because he worked his ass off to get there. You look at what Randy Orton was when he was checking himself out in the mirror, when he was debuting in 2003 against the likes of Christian and Chris Jericho, and he was stopping that fight when Jericho said Christian's tattoo looked like a blob of ink. It's a really underrated spot. I love the arguing between Jericho and Christian. I'm getting ahead of myself. Beside the point, Orton has improved so much since then. He deserves everything that he has. He has worked for everything that he has. Because if he was just another third-generation superstar that got the gift of going to OVW like everybody claims that he did, fine, great, super. But the WWE took a huge risk on Randy Orton, largely because of the reason he got out of the Marine Corps. The negative PR that would have happened if that would have gotten out and, hey, Randy Orton, the son of Cowboy Bob Orton and the grandson of Bob Orton Sr., just signed with the WWE after he deserted the United States Marine Corps during a time of war. Huge risk by the WWE. Huge risk. Orton had to work his tail off in OVW, in whatever NXT was before it was NXT, where they were down in Kentucky or Indiana or wherever the hell they were. He worked his tail off to get where he is. So if anybody, and I mean anybody outside of John freaking Cena and Triple H, should have an opinion on what makes a star and what makes a good wrestling show, it's Randall Kenneth Orton. I have zero problem with what he said, and I think more guys need to speak out against the infection, the epidemic that is infecting every major independent wrestling smart in or around the internet and all across this great big globe of ours, and that is independent wrestling is the cancer in which big market, real professional wrestling, the WWE, WCW, ECW, TNA, Impact, and even Ring of Honor, it is the cancer that is going to kill us all as wrestling fans.
Well, I definitely agree with you on Randy Orton. My only point here is it only became big because it was Randy Orton who said it. But if it were another homegrown, like what I said, Dolph Ziggler, it's not going to be that much of an issue. The indie guys are just going to say, nah, just another hater. But since it was Randy Orton, that's what made it such a big issue in the wrestling world.
Well, another reason...
I would still not be a fan of this comment, but I'd be so much better with it if John Cena did say it. If John Cena said it, my problem would not... I would not have as big as a problem with the comment than with Orton saying it.
Well, another thing is that Orton wrestles the anti-independent wrestling match. You know, Ziggler very much could take the same match he's going to have tomorrow night with Nakamura, and he could take it to Ring of Honor, and they could have the identical match. And nobody would bat an eye and notice the difference between the match at Backlash to the match at WrestleFest, 86, the war for the second bleacher seat, or whatever they want to call it. Nobody would bat an eye because it would be the exact same. You take Orton and you put him in a GFPCXFW show, or whatever the hell acronym they want to call it, and he will get booed by the 15 people that are in that VFW hall. He will get booed straight out of the closet that they want to call a locker room. But that's the thing. Orton
That's where I disagree with you, though, because of Orton's ring psychology. He has great ring psychology, but he does wrestle he's boring. This match with Jinder is going to be the most boring match at Backlash. I am more excited for the women's match than I am this title match. This title match is about as relevant as the WWE. I think it's called the Universal. I haven't seen it since WrestleMania Championship. That's how relevant this match is.
Oh my god. When was the last time you got a CAT scan, Dan?
2 days ago.
You might want to check again, because there's something fundamentally wrong with you if any match gets you... is less exciting than what that women's match is going to be. Secondly, are you forgetting the Bollywood boys? The Singh brothers are going to be there? That's going to be worth watching the match just for the potential of seeing 3 RKOs in 5 seconds. Because I can see Jinder and the Singh brothers.
That's a fair point. That is a fair point. There might be one good spot.
No. I'm telling you. Point. I can see Orton controlling it early. Jinder getting, one of the Singh brothers up on the ring apron. They toss Jinder something. He clocks Orton, and for 5 minutes, Jinder is working on Orton. And then he gets him in that Cobra Clutch Slam, pins him, 1-2, kick out. Singh brothers both get on the apron. Referee's got his back turned. Orton hits Jinder with an RKO. He hits an RKO on both of them as they each, one by one, try to come into the ring. He may even hit an RKO on the referee. I'm just saying, you have the potential of just seeing RKO madness. And why isn't that marketable? Because that sounds fantastic. He could spend the latter part of his career ripping off the Macho Man, call it RKO madness. I'm dreaming again. I'm sorry. But still, anyway, Orton, Jinder... It's going to be interesting, and the fact that you're not excited for a WWE Championship match with its title lineage going all the way back, I've already did that. But anyway, you should definitely be excited for this match. Hi, May.
Well, you actually did give me something to look forward to in the match. That is going to be a great spot, because we might even actually get to see the double draping DDT, too. So, I mean, yes, I'm going to watch it, but at the same time, I'd much rather see Orton Styles. I'm just not excited for Jinder. When he won the number one contender match, I just completely, that's when I started to lose interest in SmackDown even more. Like, yes, it's the land of opportunity, but I didn't know it was a land of opportunity for jobbers.
Speaking of which, Jaime, we have the potential Tuesday night to see Jinder Mahal as a WWE champion, to see Tyler Breeze and Fandango as tag team champions. The only thing that could be better was if Heath freaking Slater won the U.S. Championship and we see Drew McIntyre as the women's champion. He could call himself Reba, have a red wig. I would love it. Is this, we've seen Drew with a huge return as he's coming back to NXT and eventually the WWE. We've seen Heath Slater with Rhino hold tag team gold. Jinder is the number one contender and potentially could be the WWE Championship. Are we all eating crow by saying 3MB is the worst thing ever now that they are all on the verge of titles?
Well, by virtue of, the concept of 3MB itself, it's the worst thing ever. But if you pick everyone apart individually, that's what makes it, hey, finally they got their shot. But the concept of 3MB itself was ridiculous, in my opinion.
Dan, 3MB or 3 count from WCW? You know who I'm talking about, right?
What's worse?
Which one would win in a 6-man, all-musical tag team match? Special guest referee, the Honky Tonk Man. And go.
Oh, 3MB's winning that match.
Jaime? Who you got?
3MB has the size advantage.
True, but you got the speed with Shannon Moore and the Hurricane. You got the wild factor of the Honky Tonk Man. I mean, who you got, Jaime?
How about the special guest referee be the Drifter?
Ooh. Or we put together a third team of the Drifter, the Honky Tonk Man, and Jeff Jarrett. We call it Guitars Are Us. Now we're cooking.
Oh my God! I would have to. I mean, I'd have to go with the Honky Tonk Man, Jarrett, and the Drifter in that one. I mean, you're talking about 3 guitars and 6 other guys, so yeah, there's at least 3 guitars getting broken. And don't forget the air guitar too. We might even see that break.
Thank you. That's why 3MB would win this, because you would see the first ever air guitar shot from Heath Slater to somebody. Maybe he ducks Jeff Jarrett's shot, and bam, the air guitar gets broken over Jeff Jarrett's head. You get the pin, and we see the 3-man band go home. Speaking of going home...
That sounds like an indie finish right there, an air guitar. That sounds like an indie finish.
Yeah. That's what I was about to say. Very indie.
I will have to say 3 Arvinces before I go to sleep tonight. Beside the point, what you can look forward to from us next week, ladies and germs, we are going to be giving you our thoughts on Backlash. We will be going deeper as it will be the podcast directly before Slammiversary, and we will be having our ever-changing lineup change once again. Dan, are you going to be back?
Let's go with yes. There's a 90% likelihood that I will be on the show next week.
So that is a no from Dan. Jaime, you coming back with me on Friday?
Yeah, as long as schedule would permit, yes, definitely. I'd love to.
All right. Dan, tell them where they can find you on Twitter.
You can find me at DDoor24. The Twitter handle never stops changing, people.
Speaking of Twitter handles changing, Jaime, what's yours this week?
Hey, this one's for good. Still the same, at the Great JLA. Follow me.
All right, and you can find the podcast at CLANDCS. That's at CLANDCS. You can also find us on SoundCloud if you just search my name, Ed Burkeen, or Caps Locks and Chair Shots. You can also find us on our YouTube channel that is all podcast all the time. This, I believe, is episode 7 or 8, so look for our other 6. Next week, like I said, we'll be breaking down Backlash, we'll be previewing Slammiversary, and we are going to get into the trial of the real Danny D to determine if he will be on the podcast further. Dan, are you going to have representation?
You never know who might pop up on this show with me. We got some guys over here at Real Sport. You never know who might show up and help defend the real Danny D.
Yeah, so that's another no from Dan. Jaime, you're going to be our judge. I will be for the prosecution and the good side. Dan will be the dark side. You're going to determine the fate of the real Danny D. Dan, if you want to pay him, be sure to get it in the proper currency for the Philippines. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's all we have here for the Caps Locks and Chair Shots podcast. If, like I said, you can find us on SoundCloud and on YouTube, but since you're listening to us, you probably already found us. Anyway, that being said, we will be back on Friday with another exciting episode of the Caps Locks and Chair Shots podcast. And as always, Jaime, if you're not down with us, he's got 2 words for you.
Keep listening.
There you go.